It's another interesting episode of Labor Lens where we bring to you happenings in the world of work. I am Sharon Ijason. This week edition, we will be wrapping up the special series on the plight of workers in Kogi State who have not been receiving salaries for more than 8 months. But first, let's take the news. We will be right back. The president of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, a labor union under the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, says the minimum wage is not sufficient for workers. He spoke through the Vice President Bola Audu Innocent during the union's NEC meeting in Enugu.
The massive devaluation of the Naira has made nonsense of the take-home pay of an average Nigerian worker, particularly the civil servants. Monthly enrollment of workers can no longer take them to the bus stop, let alone taking them home. The current minimum wage of 18,000 came into force in March 2011, meaning that it is long overdue for renegotiation. It is worthy of note that the palliative committee set up by the federal government to fashion out measure to cushion the effect of petroleum price increases on the people have since concluded its assignment and established the framework for the negotiation of a new national minimum wage.
The association also declared that there were no signs that Nigeria was out of recession. The labor union insisted that despite the claim that Nigeria has exited economic recession, the reverse seems to be the case.
We are now moving to the next level where we are contemplating a sort of national strike. And the issue of minimum wage is also there, and we are expecting the federal government to have inaugurated this committee a very long time ago. So we are giving them some lifeline. We are hoping that in the next couple of days that committee will be inaugurated. But if they do not do the needful, we want to combine all these issues together so that we can have a coordinated and a national action to press home our demand.
Our take is that this NEC will take a series of decisions that will affect the working condition, the work environment of members of Association of Senior Civil Servants in all the federation, for better. Because those issues raised even in the address of the national president are the issues that are not only affecting the membership of the association, but also affecting the service itself. And that is why the NEC is here to look at it and take decision, and then follow it up through the channels of presenting issues at both state level and at federal level.
Appeals were made to the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, inaugurate the panel to do the negotiations so that a new national minimum wage for the country can be arrived at in the next few months.
The number of child laborers across the world has grown to 152 million. The International Labour Organization ILO has disclosed. A new report by the Global Job Watch body noted that child labour declined since in 2000, but the pace slowed down between 2012 and 2016. On current trends, 121 million children would still be engaged in child labour in 2025. However, the report stressed the need for improving legal protections, labour market governance, social protections, access to quality education, and social dialogue between governments, the social partners, and other stakeholders are critical aspects in battling child labour. National Union of Banks, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions Employees, NUBIFE, warned of a looming industrial unrest in the nation's financial sector over the alleged determination of officials of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment to foist a caretaker committee on the union against all known laws. Danjuma noted that though the ministry and the Minister of Labour and Employment were in the know of a court process over the ministry alleged interference in the affairs of the union, some officials of the ministry acting under an external influence were determined and desperate to foist a caretaker committee on the union and throw it into turmoil.
We especially call on the presidency to prevail on Mrs. Akwan and our cohort to respect the law and hands off the internal affair of our union, so as not to force the union to call out its members for nationwide industrial action, which could lead to shutdown of economy and its attendant consequences.
The plight of workers in Kogi under the state civil service have become worrisome in recent months, prompting our fact-finder mission to the state on the allegation of unpaid workers opting for suicide in the face of hardship and abject poverty. An example is Edward Soje, who worked with the Kogi State Teaching Service Commission for many years and was last paid in December. He committed suicide shortly after his wife gave birth to triplets. TVC News visited his family house in Ogori, Kogi State, which is about 2 hours' drive from Lokoja, the state capital. Though family members and people living in the community dreaded speaking to journalists, TVC was able to get through to Edward Soje's wife in Abuja. She opened up on how they were faring when her husband was not paid salary for more than 8 months.
I'm a federal staff. We have been managing with my salary since January till date. When I take salary, I make sure I send some amount of money to him to pay NEPA bill, the person that's helping us to wash clothes, and for his upkeep. I've been managing because I was cutting my coat according to my cloth, not even size this time around. So everything was okay. He comes here almost every week. Before it used to be 2 weeks. I used to go to Kogi before, but when I now took in, sort of traveling up and down that bad road, you know the road in our state now, I decided to be staying. Then he comes every 2 weeks. When my DD was getting closer, I started coming every week, full of life, nothing, no quarrel, nothing.
Workers and residents in Kogi State described how they have been coping with life amidst non-payment of salaries for between 2 months and 22 months.
The basis for a civil servant on a civil service job is as the month ends, you get your salary. And that month's salary you get takes you to run the next month to meet up the order. So once you are not getting your salaries consistently in those months, it becomes difficult to even feed the 3 square meals. People, civil servants in Kogi State have become beggars. They go to beg to feed.
Because they cannot access their salaries. In fact, they cannot do any other business. They cannot pay school fees of their children. They cannot even attend to their medical challenges because of non-payment of salaries.
If I buy road, I don't see anybody that help me how much. I know if you tell them, so it's my own problem with this. Now I make our own talk. Then if you help us for the market, you lose. If I get money, I carry my pikin go school. Then I send my pikin come now. The money now carry go for school now no get.
It has not been easy, no. Since all this while, we will come to market and share our property. We no see customers because there is no paid civil servant. There is no market. Even for my children to go to school, they cannot go to school. The life is very difficult. It's not easy.
Most people are complaining that there's no salary. And since there's no salary, they don't even have money to afford the bread. Everybody who eats bread knows that bread is like an appetitive food for everybody. Of which whether some people who have no money, they want to eat bread. You understand me? But people now only tell me they want to eat the bread, but there's no money for it. And probably the main background reason why they have no money to eat bread is because they don't pay salaries.
The workers who had been on strike for 7 weeks called off their strike on Friday, 10th November 2017, following Kogi government's promise to pay workers 1 month's salary out of the 22 months arrears. Across Nigeria, more than 10 states are owing workers between 2 months and 11 months salaries. Many other states are owing pensioners gratuity and cooperative deductions. Some states even fail to regularly remit contributory pensions deductions. Following the recent release of the 2018 budget, economists have advised that states live within their means and not borrow so as to be able to meet their salary obligations to workers. But what will it take to clear the backlog of unpaid workers' salaries, especially in Kogi State? Well, that remains a million-dollar question begging for answer.
Our laws is not protecting the workers because the truth is not found from even the civil servant. I'm a civil servant. I work in a security background there. I believe the problem that we are having is unity. I still talk about unity, unity in the office, unity in everything we are writing, and unity whatever we see.
Precisely, I would say no. Reason being that we have had a situation whereby the federal government is threatening to say that no work, no pay. We have had a situation whereby they said the federal government, the state government, the governors are threatening the workers. You can see that there is no security of job. Understand? Those that are into the job, they are not secured, and the threats, the threat given to the workers is so alarming that it brings a chaos to the country and to the state.
Yes, emphatically yes. They are protecting their workers, but there is politics that is involved. Sentiment, and I call it sentiment for third time. Some people trying at least to cover their own brothers based on this is under the carpet of sentiment, religious sentiment. But when you look at the real labor union leaders, they are trying their best, and I give them kudos for their best. They are trying. But my prayer for them, may God give them the strength to save from this Holocaust, because some people are looking after them, looking after their life. I am standing to tell them that they should keep on a luta continua for them.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, we were supposed to speak with the Kogi State government, but they refused to react to this development because the workers had called off their strike recently. But I was able to catch up with the Nigerian Labour Congress General Secretary. He spoke to me about the plans the Trade Union Congress has to ensure that workers' rights are protected. Join me. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I would like to ask you, sir, as the General Secretary of NLC, a lot has been said about different states owing workers' salaries. Right now, Kogi State government is owing workers' salaries ranging from 8 months to 22 months. Is this acceptable?
No, clearly it is not acceptable. We have had cause to publicly state that of all the states, the situation, the worst case is that of Kogi. There were other states like Benue that were close, like a close second. But we have, through discussions with the state government recently, started the process of paying down, the backlog. And 2 months resulted from that discussion. And they are not even near where Kogi State is. The Kogi State government has not really opened up itself for engagement. If you have, instead of public statements that tend to deny the obvious, because they will claim today that they are not owing, tomorrow they will tell you they are owing only a few months, and then the next day they will spend millions of naira publishing salary payment for last year in newspapers. I think there is total mismanagement of governmental affairs in Kogi State, and the backlog of salaries owed workers cannot be continued. We have written recently to the state government informing them that this was unacceptable, and that if they did not take steps to quickly start to correct this, we will mobilize workers, not just from Kogi State, but from across the country to come and actually occupy Kogi State until these things are done better.
From my observation, the Kogi State governor seems to be paying workers' salaries in fractions. Is this acceptable under the Nigerian labor laws?
No, there is nothing like fractional salary in the law. The labor law, the act states that a worker, after working 30 days for a month, the salary is due. It is actually a violation of the Act because employment is a contractual relationship. You contract me to put in a particular service, and I do that for a month. At the end of that, you are obligated to then pay me my entitlements. And when you do not, it is a violation. So the issue of saying fractional salary, or some people are paid this month, others are not paid, all these are just violations of the law and are actually indices of poor governance and poor management skills of the state government.
What is NLC trying to do to salvage the situation in Kogi State?
Well, we were at a situation in which, after we wrote the letter, put a government on notice that we would move to Kogi State. We then got a reply in which the state government said they were setting up a committee to do dialogue and negotiate directly the issues with the workers. And that committee was set up, chaired by the deputy governor on the government side. And Labour put up its 9-person team, and I think they actually met and started the process of trying to discuss how these matters can be resolved. When suddenly a Labour official in the state was then gunned down. And that is what has prevented the negotiation from then continuing. Because even from our own point of view at the National Secretariat, we were ready and we offered to send an observer to a technical team from here to join that negotiation so that we are on top of the issues and we know how the matters can be resolved. Because you see, it's not just a matter of saying you are owing so many months of salary. We want to see evidence. What have you used resources that you had for to then come to this situation? There have been special interventions. There has been the intervention by the federal government in terms of giving relief to the states, specifically targeted at payment of salaries. There has been 2 tranches of the Paris Club reform, which, although they are actually reforms of state money, the states own the money as a refund to them. But part of the agreement and the timing of the reform was based on the undertaking made by the governors that they would use at least 50% of what they get to defray salaries. In the case of Kogi, there is no evidence that any of this has been done. Because if they had utilized effectively such monies, we would not be talking of the type of number of months that we are talking of. So it is the capacity issue. And we want to be able to engage and let them open their books if they have nothing to hide. And we will be able to demonstrate and let them show what they have, how they have utilized resources that have come their way.
As a Labour leader, would you say that any governor or state governor that refuse to pay workers' salary is sensitive to the plight of workers?
We have the president of the NLC had cause to formally declare them, the Kogi state workers, as if they are living in internally displaced persons camp. And it was after that declaration that you heard of some National Assembly people pledging that they were sending bags of rice and all that. A governor who sits and takes his own full perquisites every month. A governor who sits and eats and feasts and dines and wines on state resources, because that's what they do. And a governor who sits and takes the so-called security vote, and he has resources to do all those, to then see his workers in abject poverty, or being owed 18 months, 20 months, and people are committing suicide because they cannot make ends meet. It is the most insensitive type of thing that you could do. And we think it is unfortunate that the state is faced with this type of situation.
Would you say that Nigerian labor laws protect workers?
The laws protect workers. It is the enforcement of those laws that is the issue. When you hear, for instance, some states, we're not even paying minimum wage. We're paying salaries below minimum wage. That's a violation of the law. And if you violate the law, there are procedures. There are those who are supposed to enforce the law. And that's where the federal government is complicit in some of these matters. Where laws have been violated, the federal government needs to prosecute those who have violated laws. You may talk of immunity to governors, but state governments are legal entities that can be taken to court and that can be prosecuted. And I think that these are things that we need to start doing. The laws provide the conditions that ought to protect workers, but they are not being applied fully, including not just in the public sector, even in the private sector. The issues of the conditions of work in factories, they are provided for. But the Inspectorate Division of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment that is supposed to do factory inspection and therefore enforce those conditions is not, either is not fully resourced to be able to carry out its work or whatever. But those things are not being done. And those are areas where true implementation needs to be done so that the laws can have meaning.
Is there any plans for the Nigerian Labour Congress to pressurize the federal government to take action, especially in states where they are owing workers' salaries? Yes,
actually, we have organ meetings coming next week. The full complements of the NLC organ meetings, starting from the National Administrative Council to the Central Working Committee, National Central Working Committee, to NEC. And with the issue of Kogi will be frontally on the burner in those meetings. But even before then, we had already discussed and taken positions that, and through the press announced it, that we plan to move to Kogi State. But beyond that, we also plan action, rallies to the presidency to pressure it specifically on the issue of Kogi, and the same to the National Assembly. So we will engage on a multi-pronged approach to bring attention and bring the full weight of Nigerian workers nationally to bear on the situation in Kogi State.
Finally, I would like to ask you, the International Labour Organization for the past few years has been trying to promote decent work across the world. What is the Nigerian Labour Congress trying to do to promote decent work across the country? Well, the issue of decent work is something that we are constantly working on. You know, we have a standing committee for anti-casualization and promotion of decent work. On the 5th of October, we were actually, remember, we marked the Decent Work Day. And that process, we had a number of factories picketed in Lagos. We had 2 agencies here, MTN and the Abuja Environmental Board, Protection Board, picketed in Abuja. And all these are actions to try to insist and demand for decent work. Where we identify specific decent work deficits, we intervene in such places. These can take the form of agencies or establishments, whether public or private, that refuse, for instance, voluntary unionization by workers, because decent work requires that workers have freedom to freely associate and form unions. When there is such, we go in and we contest until we get such places unionized. Where there is casualization and there is clear evidence that people are being exploited, either, we've seen establishment where there are people who are regarded as casual workers or auxiliary workers, some call them. For 12 years, people have been working. They have no real scheme of service. They have nothing. They are not on a process for any retirement benefits or anything. Those cannot be. And that's why we are targeting those establishments and insisting that things need to be done differently. Some of them are yielding positive results because when we engage and we are able to then come to say, let's do the right thing, and they agree, we move on. And we regard that as having been achieved. Other areas, if they are intransigent, we do what
continuous campaigns we would have to do. For instance, in the case of MTN, we started the process of talking. We are still talking. But if it does not yield results, we are also cooperating, not just in Nigeria, because MTN is not just a Nigerian company. We are cooperating with COSATU in South Africa. We are cooperating with TUC, Ghana TUC in Ghana, and we are cooperating with KOTU in Kenya, where these are places where MTN is operating. We want to be able to then jointly take these matters up so that whatever decent work deficits exist in any of these countries can be corrected. And such global meetings are taking place. One just ended in South Africa last week, and we were represented.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's a wrap on today's edition of Labor Lens. Join us next week for a fresh edition of Labor Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember, labor creates wealth.